Okay, good afternoon to all of you. Uh, I wish you all the best, and I think around 11 people they have already joined. So it's now high time to start. Also, it's 5 o'clock. Uh, Today we shall begin with this course that is MPS 003. The name of the subject is India, Democracy and Development. I know this is definitely one of the most interesting topics since it relates to the history of democracy and development in our country. You know, in this course, you have two books, book one and two. The first book containing around 18 units. And in 1947, we have achieved independence. And we have opted for democracy as one ideal and also as one ideology. And also, we have opted for a democratic way of life. So, in this particular course, this democracy and development, a general background can be provided and also a context to the Indian democracy can be provided. And these deal basically with four themes relating to our democracy and development in India. A background to the democracy and development in terms of legacy of the national movement, then debates on development, constitutional and social transformation, that is social, economic, and political context, then the state institutions and political process. Actually, these are the four themes which are broadly dealt with in this particular course. Today, I shall try to cover up around 3 to 4 units. And first and the most important thing is that we must know about the history of democracy. जे आमे गणतंत्र को केमती in a gradual course we have achieved it. In a gradual process, we have achieved independence. Because we have a long protracted freedom struggle. And there are many leaders led by Mahatma Gandhi and other important leaders, those who have sacrificed their time for achieving independence and fighting out the foreign yoke from our country. The most important is that you must be knowing, of course, it's a very interesting thing to note that even though Britishers, they have ruled over us for more than 200 years, many democratic ideas and ideologies we have borrowed from them. So in some way or other, we are obliged to them. They have tried to train the Indians in the democratic spirit. Not that all that they have given to us is oppression. They have also given us many positive reformations. You must be knowing, for example, there are many governor generals like, or many uh, good souls like, for example, William Bentinck. There are a lot of important social reformations during his period. There are a lot of developments during the rule of Dalhousie. You must be knowing it from the history and all that. And only foreigner has established the Indian National Congress in 1885. ତାଙ୍କର ନାମ ଥିଲା ଆଲାନ୍ ଅକ୍ଟାଭିଆନ୍ ହ୍ୟୁମ୍. Alan Octavian Hume is the person who has established Indian National Congress in 1885, and many educated Indian elites, they have actually joined this Indian National Congress. And indeed, this particular organization has galvanized the very patriotic spirit of the Indians. So that we were very much obliged that a particular organization established by the foreigners, particularly, who is the founder? I have already told you, Alan Octavian Hume. And this organization was responsible to inculcate the very spirit of independence or the idea of freedom with the Indians. So our leaders like Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, and many more, they have imbibed the spirit of nationalism. The Indian National Congress was really formed with a very modest constitutionalist idea, constitutionalist approach and outlook. Their approach was not violent. British ମାନଙ୍କୁ ସେମାନେ ଯୋଉ ଦାବି ବା demands before the Britishers they were putting, it was they are not extremists. They do not believe in pressure and agitation. They want to influence the British rulers or imperialistic rulers in our country through petition and
Sir, sound ठीक है सुनी.
petition and persuasion. Sound, am I not audible? ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଶୁଭୁଛି? Hello?
ଆଜ୍ଞା sir ଶୁଭୁଛି but clearly ଶୁଭୁନି.
ଏବେ ଏବେ ଟିକେ ଆସିଲା ତ, ବେଳେ ବେଳେ ଏଇ କନେକ୍ଟିଭିଟି ଯୋଗୁଁ ହଉଥାଏ ପାରେ. ନା ଏବେ ଶୁଭୁଛି ତ? Hello?
ଆଜ୍ଞା sir.
ସେ ବେଳେ ବେଳେ, because that was the difference between the human beings and the machine. I mean, the net and the human being. And that was the distinction between the classroom face-to-face teaching and this online teaching. ଏବେ ଆପଣ ଶୁଣି ପାରୁଛନ୍ତି ତ? Hello?
ଆଜ୍ଞା sir.
ଆଚ୍ଛା, okay then, okay. ବେଳେ ବେଳେ ଏଇ କନେକ୍ଟିଭିଟି ଯୋଗୁଁ ତେବେ 1885 ରେ ଆମର ଯୋଉ Indian National Congress was established, and our leaders, they have really imbibed and inculcated a lot of patriotic spirit, and they believe in persuasion. ସେମାନେ ବ୍ରିଟିଶ ଶାସକ ମାନଙ୍କ ଉପରେ ଇନଫ୍ଲୁଏନ୍ସ କରୁଥିଲେ, not through agitation, not through pressure, not through any extremistic activities, rather through persuasions. In 1893, Indian National Congress demanded the uniform introduction of permanent settlement of land. ଆପଣ ମାନେ ହିଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଟା ସବୁ ପଢିଛନ୍ତି. ଏଇଟା ଆମେ ଏଇ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ୟୁନିଟରେ ତାର ଗୋଟେ ବ୍ୟାକଗ୍ରାଉଣ୍ଡ ଦଉଛେ, ଯୋଉଟା କି ଆମେ ଓଡିଆ କହୁଥିଲେ ଚିରସ୍ଥାୟୀ ବନ୍ଦୋବସ୍ତ. ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କର ମନେ ଥିବ चिरस्थायी बंदोबस्त, permanent settlement of land, and that was meant to save the landholders from the harassment by the government. ତେଣୁ ସେମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ଚିରସ୍ଥାୟୀ ବନ୍ଦୋବସ୍ତ ଥ୍ରୁରେ in 1893 they wanted that the British rulers should refrain from oppressing the landholders of India. ତାପରେ ଆପଣ ଦେଖିବେ 1895 ରେ just after decade annexation he started Indian Home Rule League, Home Rule movement से start करती है. And also a leader of the Indian National Congress drafted a constitution of Indian bill envisaging a constitution which guarantees every citizen freedom of expression, then important rights like rights to equality, rights to property, likewise. And you know, at a special session at Bombay in 1918 on the Montagu-Chelmsford report, अपने शासन, you know, just knowing पार्लियामेंट शासन संस्कार रहतिला 1909 रे, that is 1909. In 1919 Montagu-Chelmsford Act was passed also, but in 1918, just a year before, in Bombay session Montagu-Chelmsford report उपस्थापित होला, and the Congress demanded that the new government of India contains a declaration of the rights of the Indians. So in 1925 a subcommittee was set up by all parties, conference chaired by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. सबू पॉलिटिकल पार्टी मानू को नेकरी गोटे ऑल पार्टी कमिटी सब कमिटी तैयारी हैला एवं तार चेयरमैन एमके गांधी. They have prepared a Commonwealth of India bill which demanded self government. आमे कोन देखन गोटे ब्रीफ हिस्ट्री दउचे जे केमती धीरे धीरे आमे डेमोक्रेसी को गले, धीरे धीरे आमे किंतु हमर फ्रीडम टा को पाइले, सेल्फ रूल आड़ को गले, स्वायत्त आड़ को गले, स्वायत्त शासन आड़ को गले. So in this subcommittee report which was headed by MK Gandhi, the demand was self-government for Indians from the village upward. And आप देखिए एपरि कि या पर हम देखिए 73rd 74th amendment act जो हैला एबे quite present in 1992 and all that. Local self government idea बा पंचायत राज idea टा very much it's a Gandhian idea. That is virtually a principle of grassroots democracy. Please remember जे आमे गणतंत्र टा तृणमूल स्तर रो आनिया from the grassroots itself. In 1928 also there is another committee that is called Motilal Nehru Committee, which incorporated all these demands and added the right of all citizens to the writ of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus artha, which was meant to act as a bulwark against arbitrary detention. Habeas corpus means to have the body. आपण मन पढुथिबे तो रिट जुरिस्डिक्शन अछि जोटा कि हाई कोर्ट बा सुप्रीम कोर्ट से जुरिस्डिक्शन बळ रे मौलिक अधिकार को रक्षा करंती. राइट सेथरे देखिथिबे हम भी ग्रेजुअली पढिबा इन फंडामेंटल राइट्स चैप्टर, राइट टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल रेमेडीज. There is a habeas corpus. मैडमस पांच प्रकार रिट विशेष में डिटेल पढ़िबा. तेणु देखिए मोतीलाल नेहरू कमिटी रिपोर्ट 1928 incorporated this particular right of all the citizens to this writ of habeas corpus, protection in respect of punishment under ex post facto laws, arbitrary detention, arrest, non-discrimination against any person on grounds of race, religion, creed in matters of public employment. You know, all these demands not only are political nature, they have also economic implications. And all the enactments which have been done prior to 1947, 1947 मसीहा पूर्व जितने enactment करा जायछि, which are the result of the demand of Indian National Congress or so-called leaders, those who are engaged in the freedom struggle. सबुठार मोस्ट नोटेबल कंट्रीब्यूशन बा सबुठार इंपोर्टेंट कंट्रीब्यूशन होची गांधीकर कंट्रीब्यूशन। एनो आपण देखि आपण से चैप्टर रे गांधीकर कंट्रीब्यूशन रे स्पेशल एम्फासिस दिया जाय। व्हाट वाज द कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ गांधी? देखंतु prior to Gandhi and even after Gandhi, most of the independent or what we call the freedom struggles of other countries, many countries, they have one element of violence. But you know, it is Gandhi who has shown the world a new technique that freedom can be achieved in non-violent ways. Think of technique of satyagraha, the technique of Swaraj. This is something unique. The outside world was simply astounded that how is that a very simple fellow with simplicity would give the world a new weapon to fight against any foreign rule. Because you know that was a period when most of the Afro-Asian countries, they were under the dominance of the Western powers. You know, most of the, I mean, history says that British, French, Dutch, Portuguese, these are the colonial powers. Virtually, they have their colonies in these Afro-Asian countries. Even, you know, in India also, prior to British, there is Portuguese pocket. आप देखिए गोवा, Portuguese pocket. Think of Pondicherry, it was French pocket. But after East India Company came, then British rule came. Virtually, British was the most dominant foreign yoke in our country. Gandhi had a special position in the freedom struggle of our country. So, his visits to Champaran in Bihar, आपण जानते हैं समय पीजेंट माने भारी अपस्ट होतिले चंपारण आंदोलन विषय आपण जानते हैं चंपारण and his visits to Champaran in Bihar to save the peasantry from exploitation of the British indigo planters. Then his initiation of the peasant satyagraha at Khaira in Gujarat and his intervention in the labor dispute of the Sarabhai textile mills in Ahmedabad. These are some of the episodes where Gandhi could use his technique of satyagraha and was also successful. And these episodes in the early life of Gandhi's career suggest that whereas Gandhi took a clear anti-imperialistic position, he was in favor of solving the class conflict within the Indian society through persuasion, by convincing people, not by agitation, not by in extreme steps and all that. ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଆପଣ ଦେଖିବେ ଲାଟରରେ ଏହାରେ କଂଗ୍ରେସ ଭିତରେ ସବୁ ଡିଭିଜନ ହେଲା moderates and extremists. Virtual extremists that fell out of this Gandhian techniques and all that. While the Congress fought for the interests of the peasants and the farmers, many of whom actively participated in Satyagraha. Then another important contribution of Gandhi is Gandhi's substance of Swaraj. Actually, it was in the month of January. Indian National Congress 1930 demand hela complete independence पूर्ण स्वाधीनता. And it was a demand in the Lahore Resolution in December 1929. And Gandhi had this Young India as a publication where in Young India, published by Gandhi, he laid down certain perceptions about Swaraj. And also, he laid down clearly, chalked out the theme and substance of independence. It was total prohibition, reduction of pound rupee exchange ratio, then reduction of the land revenue, abolition of salt tax. Se samay apan dekhithibe salt, which is a very essential thing for the Indians. Tapre tikkos bsautile Britishers. Lawna satyagraha, salt satyagraha bishay apan janichandi. Abolition of salt tax, then reduction of the military expenditure, and reduction of salaries of the highest grade officers, so that economic parity can be maintained in the society. He also thought in terms of or advocated for protective tariff on foreign cloth, passage of the coastal tariff reservation bill, and discharge of all political prisoners, save those condemned for murder or attempt to murder. केवल जो मैंने नरहत्या बा नरहत्या संपुक्त था व्यक्ति मान को छाड़ दिले अन्य समस्त पॉलिटिकल प्रिजनर्स मान को मुक्त करिया पे कहै जो माने तार अर्थ को जो माने रियल क्रिमिनल्स they must be punished, but those who have been victimized by the foreign rule because they fought against them, जो फ्रीडम फाइटर मान को बंदी करके ब्रिटिश सरकार रखिथिले जो माने राजनैतिक बंदी से मान को डिस्चार्ज कर दो आसमान को मुक्त करिया पे मध्ये डिमांड करथिले. Abolition of the CID, because that is a popular control through which the government, the foreign government was trying to intimidate the Indians. Then issue of licenses to use firearm should be made, which is a part of history of freedom struggle in India. That is the Karachi resolution of the Congress. AICC, All India Congress तार विभिन्न समय रे विभिन्न रिजोल्यूशन विभिन्न स्थान रे नउथिले. कराची resolution, All India Congress Committee AICC रो, it was passed in 1931, and it was the first clear statement of the socio-economic contents of freedom movement. Karachi resolution ना कराची ठारे जो अधिवेशन बसिथिला ऑल इंडिया कांग्रेस कमिटी रो, the statement was a clear statement of the socio-economic contents. It laid down that the organization of the economic life must conform to the principle of justice. The state would safeguard the interest of the workers, and the state must strive to achieve suitable legislation, a living wage, work. Then also instruments or mechanisms for settlement of the society. And also in this resolution, actually, Congress demanded a system of land tenure which would be reformed. The peasants were promised an equitable adjustment of the burden on agricultural land. immediate relief to the small peasantry through substantial reduction of rent and revenue. Then state would protect indigenous cloth against foreign cloth. You know, the popular ways of controlling the economy was, and so far as Britishers are concerned, they are using India as a market, as a source of raw material. They're snatching the raw materials for our country, transporting them to their own. The finished product were there. After their use, the rest was sent back, and they have used our country as a market. ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଦେଖିବେ ବିଶେଷ କରି ଟେକ୍ସଟାଇଲ ବେଶୀ ହଉଥିଲା ଆପଣଙ୍କ ଯୋଉ ଇଣ୍ଡିଗୋ ଚାଷ ହଉଥିଲା ଏସବୁ କଟନ ଟେକ୍ସଟାଇଲ ମିଲ୍ସ ଗୁଡାକ ବହୁତ ଗ୍ରୋ କରେଲା ବ୍ରିଟିଶର୍ସ ମାନେ ସେମାନେ ଫରେନ୍ କ୍ଲଥ କୁ ବେଶୀ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାନ୍ସ ଦେଇକିରି ଇଣ୍ଡିଜିନସ୍ କ୍ଲଥ କୁ ଲେସର ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାନ୍ସ ଦଉଥିଲେ. So the state would protect the indigenous cloth against the foreign cloth, so that our cloth must be marketed better. आप मार्क करिवे कुटीर शिल्पर जो आइडिया गांधी देथिले काहेकि द होमस्पन क्लॉथ एंड ऑल दैट कुटी खाओ काटी पिंधो. It means that indigenous industries, cottage industries should be promoted, and the other indigenous industries would be likewise protected against foreign competition. ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଡିମାଣ୍ଡ ଯୋଉଟା ଗାନ୍ଧୀ ମଧ୍ୟ ସ୍ୱରାଜର କନସେପ୍ଟରେ ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି ବା ଇଣ୍ଡିପେଣ୍ଡେନ୍ସ ଥିମ୍ ହିସାବରେ ନେଇଛନ୍ତି, ପ୍ରୋହିବିସନ, ଇଣ୍ଟକ୍ସିକେସନର ଟୋଟାଲ ପ୍ରୋହିବିସନ. କୌଣସି ପ୍ରକାର ମାଦକ ଦ୍ରବ୍ୟ ସେବନ କରାଯାଇ ପାରିବ ନାହିଁ. ଇଟ୍ ସୁଡ୍ ବି କମ୍ପ୍ଲିଟଲି ବ୍ୟାନ୍ଡ. And intoxicating drinks or drugs should be totally prohibited. The state would also own control key industries and services, mineral sources, railways, waterways, and also any means of public transport. You know, you must be knowing that in 1935 there was also a concept of provincial autonomy, and Congress party came to power in several provinces in 1937. এবং সেটি ସେମାନେ ଯେତେବେଳେ କ୍ଷମତାକୁ ଆସିଲେ, they tried to deliver some of the promises which have been made in this resolution, some of the Gandhian principles and all that. କିନ୍ତୁ ସେମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ ପାୱାରଟା ଗୋଟେ ଇଣ୍ଟରିମ୍, let us say for a very limited period like 2 years, they have only enjoyed power. So they could not make a big way so far as their promises are concerned. The promises were only partially fulfilled. So about 20 years after Karachi session, the Indian constitution largely enshrined the promises made in 1931. ଆମର ଆମେ ୟାପରେ ପଢିବା ଆମର କନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନଟା ତିଆରି ହେଲା କାହା ଦ୍ୱାରା? କନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁଏଣ୍ଟ ଆସେମ୍ବଲି ଦ୍ୱାରା. ତେଣୁ 1931 ମସିହାରେ 1931 କରାଚି ରେଜଲ୍ୟୁସନର ଯୋଉ ପ୍ରୋଭିଜନ୍ସ ଥିଲା, those are only partially fulfilled by some of the provisions where Congress has taken over the administration, but that is a very for a very brief period, so they could not make any headway. But the resolutions are fulfilled. ତାକୁ ସାକାର କରାଗଲା only after the constitution was prepared from 1946 to 1949, and it was implemented in independent India. ତେଣୁ ଭର୍ଚୁଆଲି ଦେଖିବେ ଆମେ ରିପବ୍ଲିକ ହେଲା 1950 ମସିହାରେ, ତେଣୁ 20 ବର୍ଷ ପରେ ସେ ରେଜଲ୍ୟୁସନଟାକୁ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିକାଲାଇଜ କରାଗଲା ବା ତାକୁ they have been put to practice. Another important thing is the idea of socialism. You know, why I am talking about socialism? You know, India was not one isolated country. It is one of the countries of the world. And very big nations like Russia or America, ଆପଣ 1970 ମସିହା କଥା ଭାବନ୍ତୁ, the big nation which is USSR or ପରେ ରଷିଆ ହେଲା disintegration ପରେ, it was also not a very free land. Bourgeois were dominating in that land in 1917. That's Lenin. সেটা আপনারা ভালো জানেন। So the Bolshevik revolution of 19 Russia, it created in India এবং socialism, Bolshevism was virtually inspired by the ideology of whom? Karl Marx, जे कि मार्क्स और एंजेल्स आपण जानते कम्युनिस्ट मैनिफेस्टो लिखिथिले, जुथरे से कहिथिले बुर्जुआ एक्सप्लॉयटेशन कंप्लीटली obliterated, it will be a classless society. किंतु कार्ल मार्क्स एक्चुअली किछि जगह टिके फॉल्सिफाइड हेतिले केमति he could foresee that this will be successful in industrialized societies. Rather, Marxism was successful in a agrarian country like Russia. Bolshevism is a revolution which was geared up by Marxism. And for your information, Russia was not by that time highly industrialized. It was an agricultural country. The Cossacks, even peasantry. Peasantry ମାନଙ୍କୁ exploit କରୁଥିଲେ ସେଠା ବୁର୍ଜୁଆ ମାନେ. So the Bolshevik revolution ଯେତେବେଳେ successful हुआ, Indian leaders they could also get this idea of socialism from them. This class exploitation should go. କାରଣ ମାର୍କ୍ସିଜମ ର ଗୋଟେ ବଡ଼ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଜିନିଷ ହେଉଛି workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. ତେଣୁ ଆମର ଇଣ୍ଡିଆରେ କଂଗ୍ରେସ ଦ ଡୋମିନେଣ୍ଟ ପାର୍ଟି, ରାଇଟ୍, କିନ୍ତୁ ତା ଛଡ଼ା କିଛି କିଛି ସୋଶାଲିଷ୍ଟ ଗ୍ରୁପ୍ସ ମାନେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଥିଲେ। and these small socialist groups, they emerged in urban centers in India. Completion of the first 5-year plan by the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic in 1934 created one enthusiasm for planning in India. Our Indian leader socialism re udbuddha hole, they could get this idea from them. देखिए गोटे आमर सोशलिज्म रे मध्ये पड़े नेहरूवियन सोशलिज्म, आमर सोशलिज्म एकदम टिपिकल रशियन टाइप रो नुहे। आम से कहते नेहरू और फर्स्ट प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो आइडिया ऑफ सोशलिज्म देले, दैट वाज डेमोक्रेटिक सोशलिज्म। एंड those have some idea of this study, in 1964 in this Bhubaneswar there is a all India Congress committee session, जिमते लाहौर कराची सब जगह हेतला। भुवनेश्वर सेशन रे democratic socialism has been accepted as a place for government. किंतु आइडियाटा देखंतु 1970 मसिया 1917 onwards idea of socialism has inspired the Indian leaders. So Jawaharlal Nehru had shown great admiration for socialism as early as 1928. 1928 मसिया से मध्य socialism प्रति आकृष्ट थे। And Nehru's conviction was that the only solution of the world's problems and of India's problem lies in socialism. ताकर किते इंपोर्टेंट स्टेटमेंट थिला जे वर्ल्ड रो जते समस्या रहिछि आ भारत रो मध्ये जो समस्या रहिछि तार गोटी होछि समस्या समाधान बा आंसर इज सोशलिज्म। Of course, this statement could make an ideological rift within the top brass leaders of Congress. Congress ଭିତରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଲିଡର ମାନଙ୍କର ନିଜ ନିଜ ମଧ୍ୟ ପର୍ସନାଲ ଓପିନିଅନ ସବୁ ଥିଲା। ତେଣୁ ସେ ସମୟରେ ସର୍ଦ୍ଦାର ବଲ୍ଲଭଭାଇ ପଟେଲ issued a statement to this effect that he had ideological difference with Nehru on matters like nature of capitalism। ତେଣୁ ନେହେରୁଙ୍କର ଏତେ ଦୂର ତାଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ସାମିଲ ହୋଇପାରିନଥିଲେ। He has a different view of capitalism। So Patel wanted to contest Nehru for the presidency of Congress in the next session of Faizapur। ଫୈଜପୁରର ଯୋଉ ସେସନଟା ହେଲା ମାନେ 1918 ସେସନରେ ପଟେଲ AICC ର ପ୍ରେସିଡେଣ୍ଟ ହେବାକୁ ନେହେରୁଙ୍କ ସହିତ କଣ୍ଟେଷ୍ଟ ହେବାକୁ ଚାହିଁଲେ। Nehru recounted his position stating that socialism was not his ideological plank for the presidential election and Patel withdrew from the contest। ଅବଶ୍ୟ ସେଥିରେ when Nehru has made his stand clear, Patel withdrew from the contest of the presidency of AICC। ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଜିନିଷ ହଉଛି ମଧ୍ୟ ସାଇଡ୍ ବାଇ ସାଇଡ୍ is planning। Idea of planning, it has acquired popularity from 1934 onwards, and Nehru also has put big emphasis on this idea of planning। In 1940, a group of industrialists led by Birla, they prepared what is known as Bombay Plan। Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍।
हाँ नहीं
Yes, sir.
ଏଟା ଟିକେ ନେଟ୍ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ହବାରୁ ଟିକେ 3-4 ମିନିଟ୍ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ହେଲା. Okay. So I am now connecting it to my mobile actually. But I think I am audible. Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I shall again try to resume. So this Bombay plan was it was been initiated by some of the industries like Birla and others. So the nature of Gandhian economics and the nature of Gandhian social philosophy, they are most important. Those who have the preponderant influence so far as the freedom struggle of India is concerned. It will be wrong to see the 1930 substance of independence, जोटा कि गांधी आमे just now discuss करुले, as either the whole or the core of Gandhi's economic ideas. Gandhi's economic ideas cannot be fully discussed in this. I mean, because Gandhian ideas, they are so far-reaching and they're so multi-dimensional that from a very myopic angle, Gandhian ideas, economic ideas cannot be viewed. But it would suffice to say that in Hind Swaraj, written in 1907, some of the ideas they have been incorporated. Initially, Gandhi was opposing machines as instrument of imperialism, the very idea. କାରଣ ସେ ମେସିନ୍ ଟାକୁ view କରୁଥିଲେ that this is an instrument through which the imperialist can exploit the colonies, the colonial people, and this can lead to deprivation of the common masses. And also he initially opposed class contradiction by means of his theory of trusteeship. ଆପଣ ମାନେ ଗାନ୍ଧୀଙ୍କର ଫିଲୋସଫିର trusteeship theory ପଢିଥିବେ, and he opposed this class contradiction by means of this theory of trusteeship. It is also necessary to remember that Gandhi's economic thinking was a part of his broader social vision of Sarvodaya. ଆପଣ ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ ତାଙ୍କର ସବୁ କନସେପ୍ଟ ଗୁଡାକ they are all interconnected. Sarvodaya, Satyagraha, Swaraj. Sarvodaya ମାନେ କ'ଣ? Sarva Udaya. It is an all-round development. It is upliftment of all. ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ ଲୋକର ଯେତେ ଯୋଉ ସମୟରେ upliftment ହବ. So his economic and social ideas are also a part of Sarvodaya. His idea of Sarvodaya, that is development of all, upliftment of all. And it was originally conceived as Antyodaya. Antyodaya English ଟା କ'ଣ କୁହାଯାଏ? On to the last. So towards this aim, he developed a major part of the constructive program towards the abolition of untouchability. ତାଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ ଅନ୍ତ୍ୟୋଦୟ ପ୍ରୋଗ୍ରାମ ବା ସର୍ବୋଦୟ ପ୍ରୋଗ୍ରାମରେ ସେ କହିଲେ ଯୋଉ ସମୟରେ ଗୋଟେ ନେସନର ସବୁଠାରୁ ତଳେ ରହିଥିବା ଲୋକର ଉନ୍ନତି ହେଇନି, the true freedom, the true independence cannot be achieved. Antyodaya means that unto the last. So he has a lot of contribution for the upliftment of the downtrodden. विशेष करी abolition of untouchability is Gandhi's contribution. जो अस्पृश्यता निवारण हुआ दरकार. He called the untouchables Harijans. जो मन को हमें प्रेजेंट ईयर दलित अनेक दलित मूवमेंट दलित शब्द प्रयोग करा होछि. Though Gandhi didn't present a separate economic program for them, his Pune Pact with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, जे कि हमरो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन रो सबुठारु सर्वश्रेष्ठ प्रतिष्ठाता थिले, was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly, most importantly. So the Pune Pact with Dr. Ambedkar, he gave them a political status in British India's electoral system. And it was also written in independent India. से आइडियाटा इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया रे मध्य ताको रिटर्न करा गला. So the national movement was above things, any other thing, a movement for political independence. And you know, three broad aspirations about the economy of an Indian independent can be viewed here. A capitalist dream of an industrialized society in India under the minimal state control and state support. And the second aspiration is a Gandhian view of basically rural and self-sufficient economy. And the third one is socialist view of an industrialized India under strong state control and leadership. So over these particular angles, there are ideological debates. And as a result of the ideological debates, evolved a basic minimum consensus. But a basic minimum consensus through asila a debate ru that what type of economic development was needed for India. There could be no development without political freedom. You know, on these matters there was consensus. Consensus रो अर्थ कौन? सर्वसम्मति. से डिबेट रो समस्ते यही पॉइंट गुडा के एग्री कले जे पॉलिटिकल फ्रीडम बिना कौन सी डेवलपमेंट हो पारिबो नाही. Then a certain amount of state control was necessary for the economy. State control रो संपूर्ण मुक्त हेले हमरो इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी आसीबनी बा डेवलपमेंट होबनी. ता माने some doses of state control are required. Then basic natural resources should be nationalized. And there was also an overwhelming opinion that zamindari and other intermediary rights in agriculture and land, they should be abolished. जमींदारी प्रथा एवं इंटरमीडिएट प्रथा जोड़ाको बा मौजादारी प्रथा ए सब थिला एगुडाका अबोलिश करबा निहाती आवश्यक. So at least on these four basic things there was a consensus, and the basic consensus was somewhat inadequately reflected in Congress manifesto on the eve of the provincial assemblies election in early 1946. And you know, however, the Congress in this election, it was coming overwhelmingly victorious. The Congress party swept the elections in all the North Muslim majority provinces and even the Muslim majority provinces of the Northwest Frontier province. In that manifesto, the party promised, because you know, virtually Congress was the most dominant party with whose leadership independence was achieved. In the manifesto, the party promised to encourage, to modernize, and to extend industry, agriculture, social services, then public utilities. So the state must therefore own or control key and basic industries and services. It must also own mineral resources, railways, waterways, shipping, and other means of public transport. Currency and exchange, banking and insurance must be regulated in the national interest. These are the areas where state control must be emphasized. So, with this development, we can find that the foundation of the state capitalism in India was laid. ତେଣୁ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ କ୍ୟାପିଟାଲିଜମର ଫାଉଣ୍ଡେସନ ପଡ଼ିଲା। ତାମାନେ ଆମେ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଲକୁ ଆମେ ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ବହିଷ୍କାର କରିପାରିବା ନାହିଁ। But somewhat this kind of economic thinking came to be considered by many as socialism. Then what comes? Debates on the models of development. आमे जेतले डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेस को एक्सेप्ट कले debates what type of model of development should we go for. एवं गोटे आमे जेतले गोटे गणतांत्रिक राष्ट्र हेले हमर स्वाधीनता आडू हम धीरे धीरे गले ideal model of development is one essential prerequisite. Several debates also took place. About this time of independence, we have already some idea that three broad streams of thinking on India's socio-economic development they have crystallized. Capitalist industrialization with minimal state control and support. Socialist industrialization under the state guidance, and the Gandhian view of Sarvodaya, philosophically based on a distrust of state power. So these are the three broad streams of thinking. Again, I am repeating, what are the three broad streams of thinking about development model? Capitalistic industrialization with minimal state control. कारण आपण जानते कैपिटलिज्म टाको आमे जो समय चिंता करिबा तार अर्थ स्टेट रो इंटरवेंशन टाको मिनिमाइज करिबा स्टेट संकुचित हो जिवो मिनिमल जेतिक दरकार दस फार एंड नो फर्दर सेति आपण मार्क करिवे देयर इज अ बिग डिफरेंस बिटवीन द police state and the welfare state. Police state टा essentially गोटे कैपिटलिस्टिक स्टेट रो काम प्रोटेक्शन कैपिटलिस्ट माने जो समय प्रोटेक्शन चाहिए से स्टेट को डाकी के आनिबे वो स्टेट कम प्रोटेक्ट अस. सो कैपिटलिस्ट इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन विथ मिनिमल स्टेट कंट्रोल. आउ गोटे ब्रॉड थिंकिंग होची सोशलिस्ट इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन अंडर स्टेट गाइडेंस. सोशलिज्म रे कोन हो स्टेट को बेसी पावर दिया जिवो. स्टेट शैल गाइड, स्टेट शैल कंट्रोल मोर ऑफ स्फीयर्स ऑफ लाइफ in the public. And another important brand is Gandhian view of development. तांकर जो सर्वोदय फिलोसफी अंत्योदय एसु जो देखो तीनटा ब्रॉड आइडियाज आसिला ए डिबेट्स रे. कैपिटलिस्टिक इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन, सोशलिस्टिक इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन, देन गांधीयन व्यू ऑफ सर्वोदय व्हिच इज बेस्ड ऑन डिस्ट्रस्ट ऑफ स्टेट पावर. एक्चुअली जो माने गांधी फिलोसफी आपण माने पढिथिबे दोज ऑफ एनफ ऑफ आइडिया अनेक गांधी को मते गोटे अनार्किस्ट भाव में व्यू करती. नॉट दैट he wants indiscipline in society बा लॉ एंड ऑर्डर सिचुएशन करबा पई नुहे. नॉट दैट. तार अर्थ होची तांकर स्टेट ऊपर अनेक समय डिस्ट्रस्ट थिला. गांधी based his idea of Sarvodaya on a basic principle of distrust of state power. से state power को बेले बेले distrust बा तापर एते विश्वास रखु नथिले सेति में आपण तांगर फिलोसॉफी रे देखिबे that अंत्योदय बा ह्यूमन conscience ह्यूमन मोरालिटी जो समय मैक्सिमाइज्ड हबो स्टेट रो कंट्रोल रो आवश्यकता नहीं the individual can guide himself. So whatever it may be, this ideological debate was complicated by political and economic problems arising out of the Second World War. आपण देखिबे हमरो इंडिपेंडेंस ता just after the Second World War आसीची. Second World War period कौन थिला 1939 to 1945. And after that, you know, there is cabinet mission plan and all that, then Mountbatten plan. Then we got the independence. Indian Independence Act because there is a change scenario in Britain. Britain, Conservative Party lost power. Then the Labour government came. They have sanctioned independence to us. So the very ideological debate on these issues of models of development, these are all complicated by the political and economic problems which are arising out of the Second World War and also partition of the country. Because independence for immediate problem amrala partition. Because semane divide and rule policy re two nation theory Pakistan was carved out separately. So naturally, under this scenario, under this political and economic complications, problems arising out of this type of situations, the ideological debate was made more complicated. And you know, these broad streams of thinking, mu kahili, capitalistic industrialization, socialistic industrialization, then the Gandhian views, the Gandhian approach, these three broad streams of thinking were not clearly demarcated from each other. Actually, they have also some overlapping areas. Semane parasparika mutually independent nuhanti. They have certain areas of overlap. You know, आपण मानकर text आपण देखिबे से overlapping area को confusing overlaps. You know, for example, no Indian political leader was more committed to the poorest of the poor than Gandhi. Gandhi poor मानक पे जति चिंता करथिले से तांको समसामयिक बा कंटेम्पररी लीडर्स संग भितर आउ केही गरीब मानक पे एते चिंता करू नथिले. So this placed Gandhi close to the socialist position. But no Indian had a greater distrust for the state power than Gandhi. किंतु गांधी परी स्टेट पावर को डिस्ट्रस्ट करुवा बा स्टेट पावर उपरे विश्वास हरैथिबा आउ कोनोसी व्यक्ति मध्य विशेष नथिले. And this made him morally opposed to state controlled economic activities. So virtually Gandhian approach virtually was tested on the anvils, and this made him a favorite of the Indian capitalist class. देखो तो से उभय सोशलिस्टिक एवं कैपिटलिस्टिक क्लास प्रति धीरे धीरे पॉपुलराइज हेले. एंड द इंडियन कैपिटलिस्ट्स जदियो इंडिया गांधीयन फिलोसफीटा कैपिटलिज्म आड़ को मध्य अनेक समय इंटरप्रिटेड होउतला. स्टिल द इंडियन कैपिटलिस्ट्स दे हैव रिजेक्टेड गांधी स्ट्रेस ऑन स्मॉल एंड कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री. किंतु गांधी जो समय कुटीर शिल्प विषय कहले, capitalists they do not agree with him. They have fallen out because capitalism means big industries. Small cottage industries, homemade industries upare semanakra etla astha nothila. But when Gandhi advocated for this cottage industry, the so-called capitalists they have fallen out with him. So a part of this debate concerned the traditional socialist policy of nationalization as had been implemented in the Union of Soviet USSR. It was only the question, again, think of land reforms. It was only the question of land reforms that the broadest amount of national consensus had been reached. And I have already referred to what is called permanent settlement of land during British time, Chirasthai Bandobasta. And this was partly because of that permanent settlement of land, which did not encompass entire country, and a big chunk of the permanent settlement area was transferred to Pakistan, that is East Bengal. So some East Bengal was a part of Pakistan. Still, Jagirdari and other intermediary rights, Jagirdari, Amr Jamidari Pratha, Bivino, Mojimajia Jumane, exploiters group, intermediary rights, owners in the rest of the British India, they became highly unhappy with this new trade. So, the debate on land policy, the first Jamidari and intermediary rights was thus sealed. And the debate over this land policy focused on compensation. During the discussion on the rights to property in the constitution, constituent assembly right to property discussion this issue acquired poignancy because आपण मार्क करिए right to property ता माने हमर संविधान तयारी हबा प्रथम रु ही गोटे controversial article लिखिला. And you know, finally it has come to an end. In Article 31 has been dropped from the fundamental right list. You must be knowing that. So right to property is now a normal right. It is not no more a fundamental right. You know, Article 31 टाको संपूर्ण भाव में abolish कर दिया गला. And you know, then besides this land policy, also the system of control and ration and food supply. It had been also necessary during World War. Ration and food supplies. Because war summary food scarcity was very much high so far the civil population is concerned. As well as, I think in the year 1944, in the month of January, one journal that is Eastern Economist, it has suggested that a progressive strengthening of the present system of control in scope and character, so that not only it may strengthen the smooth transition to peace economy, but may also become the instrument of long-term economic planning in our country. So early in that particular year in 1944, the Commodity Prices Board consisting of many big economists like A.D. Garwal, then Gadgil, D.R. Gadgil, they were appointed. And this Commodity Prices Board had submitted a report in the same year recommending not abolition but the improvement of the system of control. So, on the other hand, the Food Grains Policy Committee, it was appointed in September 1947 with mostly industrial magnates as members, adopted by a majority and submitted in December the same year their interim report. So with these issues of land policy, then the system of control, another important issue it also cropped up, that is issue of nationalization, Jatiyakarana. The Indian businessmen were alarmed on the talk of nationalization. Bises kari the businessmen, because of nationalization, they are very much affected. And it was nationalization of any sphere like business, industries. They have come from the socialists and the left radicals. So, Eastern economists in the same year, that is 1946, because in 1944, Eastern economists have made a remark on the system of control. And in 1946, they have made a remark. I mean, this Eastern economists, it declared, we reject unreservedly the Soviet ideal of complete and immediate socialization of the whole range of the economy. And at the 20th annual session of the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries, Nehru had to assure the businessmen, କାରଣ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲାଇଜେସନ ଇସ୍ୟୁରେ ବିଜନେସମାନେ ଭାରି ଆଲାର୍ମ ଫିଲ୍ କରୁଥିଲେ, କାରଣ ସେ ଜାଣିଲେ ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ଏ ବିଗ୍ ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜ ଫର ଦେମ୍. ସୋ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଚାମ୍ବର୍ସ ଅଫ କମର୍ସ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରିର ସେସନରେ ନେହେରୁ assured the businessmen that it is wrong to imagine that this government is out to injure industry. It will be folly in our part. We want to provide facilities for industry and facilities for production, technical, scientific, and power resources, and all that. Nehru semanଙ୍କୁ assurance ଦେଲେ ଯେ no, our government, this government is not going to affect the interest of this business class. Then the issue of planning. Though there was a general welcome to the idea of planning among all sections of the Indian population, the ideas about the character of the plan varied among them. Indian businessmen firmly rejected the Soviet type of planning, and they welcomed a vague system of state guidance. It is believed that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, he was sympathetic to this particular view, and Nehru to another view, that the socialist and the left radicals envisaged a much greater role of the state in the national economic activities. So the first stand was taken by Patel, and the second stand was taken up by Nehru. But Patel is believed to have strongly registered the establishment of a planning commission by the government, which he thought would reflect the Soviet Union's economic ideology. And it was only after the death of Patel that a planning commission of India would be set up. And the planning commission setting up, Patel was very, very critical about that. So it is only after the death of Patel that a planning commission of India could be set up under the cabinet with the Prime Minister as the chairman. ଏବେ ଅବଶ୍ୟ ପ୍ଲାନିଂ କମିଶନ ଟା ଆପଣ renamed and designed as Niti Ayog. You must be knowing that, particularly during this BJP's government. What about the industrial relations? It was at the trade union front that big conflict arose. All India Trade Union Congress, trade union it was the most influential union. It was set up in 1920, and it was set up at the instance of the International Labour Organization, ILO, which was operating in the international level. and congressmen by and large distanced themselves from it. They joined this AITUC only after the Gaya session of All India Congress in 1922. Well, Prathame Congress people, they have kept a safe distance from AITUC. Only after Gaya session, they joined it. And the Ahmedabad Textile Workers Union, directly patronized by Gandhi, they never joined it. And as a result, the All India Trade Union Congress was under strong influence of the communists and the socialists. So in 1942 and after 42, in the wake of the Quit India movement in 1942, in and after this 1942 Quit India movement, congressmen, including the Congress socialists, they went to jail in large numbers in the field, was almost entirely left to the communists. And this difference, it was aggravated by two main factors. In 1942, the Communist Party had opposed the Quit India movement, on which ground the communist members of the All India Congress Committee, they were expelled. Very interesting development. In 1942, Communist Party Quit India movement को oppose करता, and naturally AICC तार communist member वन को expel कला. And secondly, after the end of the Second World War, communist militancy in the labor front increased greatly, and in view of the smooth transfer of power that was accompanied by the smooth transfer of the several British industries of India and all that, it was disliked by the Congress leadership. तापर इंडस्ट्रियल रिलेशंस क्षेत्र में मध्य 1947 में हिंदुस्तान मजदूर सेवक संघ was set up in Ahmedabad Textile Workers Union, and Indian National Trade Union Congress, that INTUC, it was also set up, and within about another year or two, other central labor organizations they have cropped up. हिंदुस्तान मजदूर सभा जी की INTUC अलगा है कि तार गोटे अलगा भाव यूनियन को तैयारी कले. देन यूनाइटेड ट्रेड यूनियन कांग्रेस जो मन की AITUC रु अलगा है गले. सो AITUC रु अलगा है कि यूनाइटेड ट्रेड यूनियन कांग्रेस एस्टाब्लिश हला, एवं इंटक दैट इज इंडियन नेशनल ट्रेड यूनियन कांग्रेस रु अलगा होई हिंद मजदूर सभा separate union हिसाब रे operate कला. So this is a brief history of, in the field of industrial relations. Then some brief reference can be made to the political debates. The ideological debate had its impact on the political around the period of independence. So ideological difference गुड़ाक विभिन्न स्फीयर रे धीरे धीरे reflected हुए. So naturally it has the ideological debate also, it has cropped up in the field of in the political sphere. The first post-war budget was inflationary. And to counteract this inflationary tendency of the national economy, Finance Minister of Interim Government, Liaquat Ali Khan, presented a budget which proposed 25% tax on all business profits. And this task was meant to restrict the spending habits of the wealthy Indians. Naturally, it has a socialist tinge. कारण तांकर ए प्रपोजल टा कौन हला जो माने वेल्दी इंडियंस से मानकर स्पेंडिंग हैबिट को कर्टेल करिया पे उद्दिष्ट थिला. एंड दिस बजेट of the interim government, where the finance minister was Liaquat Ali Khan, it practically sealed the fate of the Congress leaders, the Congress League cooperation, and was one of the major factors leading to the partition of the country. देखो एगुड़ा आम कहीं पढ़ुचे, दिस आर द हिस्ट्री which led towards the establishment of democratic independent India. 1947 रे the forward bloc left Congress. Forward bloc Congress को छाड़िला. On 28th February 1947, the Congress Socialist Party decided to drop the word Congress from the name. Man धीरे धीरे आगुर देखो Congress was virtually an umbrella organization. विभिन्न सेट बा विभिन्न ओपिनियन लोक माने एथरे थिले. With the advancement of time, gradually they have pulled out of it. Forward bloc बाहरी गला. Congress Socialist Party कांग्रेस नाटा ता थ्रू बाद दे देला. सो राम मनोहर लोहिया जे सोशलिस्ट लीडर थिले, he has accused the Congress of promising with vested interest. In March, Ram Manohar Lohia, naturally, who has become highly critical of the Congress, that it has promised vested interest, and in March 1948, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, after having been accused of neglecting the security of Mahatma Gandhi, who had been assassinated on January 1948, decided to quit the Congress. Jai Prakash Narayan declared that the draft constitution framed by Constituent Assembly of India was clumsy, not inspiring. The party's legislative assembly member in UP, who had been elected on Congress ticket, resigned and sought re-election. Of course, they are defeated. What is the gist? That gradually many notable leaders, many notable groups, they have seceded from Congress on various grounds. Forward bloc left, Congress Socialist Party left, Ram Manohar Lohia, socialist leader, became strongly critical about Congress stand. Jai Prakash left. I mean, they have become all critical about Congress stand. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel also decided to leave. So, the period around independence, therefore, saw sharp ideological debate on the future course of India's development. भारत जो समय स्वाधीनता आड़ को आगे आगे जाऊला, से समय all these sharp ideological debates they have cropped up because of various reasons. And the constitution जोटा कहला Constituent Assembly of India, जोटा कि 1946 ରୁ 49 पर्यंत काम कला, and its job was to draft the new constitution for the independent India. And in this Constituent Assembly, objective resolution was passed. It was moved by Nehru. यही सब जो इश्यू गुड़ाक स्वाधीनता समय क्रॉप अप कला, सब गुड़ा गोटे सेटल करने, सॉर्ट आउट करने, the issues, how all these troubling issues are to be sorted out. These issues are sought to be sorted out in the objectives resolution, which was passed in Constituent Assembly of India fairly in the early stage. कारण एगुड़ा को सॉर्टेड न कले से माने गोटे कनसेंसस व्यू नहीं पारिबेनी समस्त द्वारा एक्सेप्टेड होथबा गोटे डॉक्यूमेंट and the constitution is the highest document of the land, highest law of the land. ताको प्रिपेयर करिया पूर्व all these issues must be sorted out. सेति नेहरू कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली रो अर्ली स्टेज रे ऑब्जेक्टिव्स रेजोल्यूशन को आनिथिले एवं हेटा पास हेतिला. And you know, this should guarantee to all people of India justice, social, economic and political, freedom of thought, expression, belief, worship, faith and worship, and also it must safeguard the interest of the minorities, backward sections, tribal areas, and also depressed and other backward classes of the country. So these are all the developments around independence. तापर independent हेले आमर संविधान प्रणयन पे आमर जो कैबिनेट मिशन प्लान तांकर मध्य प्रपोजल देले. Then Indian Independence Act was passed. इंडिपेंडेंस रो किछि वर्ष आगुरु तमेने देखो 3 वर्ष पर्यंत कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली टा काम कला. कारण गोटे देश जतले स्वाधीन होबा को जाउची, when it is going to see the light of independence, freedom, in that case a particular document which can contain these aspirations of the Indians, all section of the Indians must be contained. So please remember, any democratic country has been defined as the hello, am I audible? Hello,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
am I audible?
Yes, sir. Audible.
Yes, sir.
आपण सुनी पारछन तो सबु?
Yes, sir.
Okay, हाँ. नहीं मु मझे I want to ascertain that whether the talk is one-sided. Okay. So the next problem is how to frame the constitution of new India, the independent India, new independent and democratic country. Constitution is always defined as the highest legal document of any country, any democratic country. It is a legal and political document. कारण आपण माने समस्त +2 लेवल रो मध्ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन रो कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली विषय जानि छंती. तार प्रथम जिंस होची द प्रिएम्बल. And you know, the preamble of the constitution contains the very spirit of the constitution, the very objective of the constitution. You know, गोटे देशर संविधान गोटे सिग्निफिकेंट पॉइंट होची इट इज फ्यूचर ओरिएंटेड. आपण मार्क करना जो संविधान टा हमरो 1946 रु 49 भीतर तयारी हेतला. प्रिएम्बल रे कोन लिखा है टू हियर बाय अडॉप्ट एंड एनैक्ट दिस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन टू आवरसेल्व्स. दैट वाज 26th day of November 1949. 26th day of 1949 रे सेटा अडॉप्ट करा गला किंतु कार्यकारी हैला हमरो 26 January 1950 रु हम जेतले रिपब्लिक हैला. किंतु अडॉप्शन वाज बीइंग मेड in 1949 November. तामने आमे बर्तन 2025 मसिया रे पहुंचलेनी. We have arrived. Now we have a journey through 2025. So virtually it is around 77 years of journey. and this is a living document. ସେଥିପାଇଁ କେତେ amendment ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆମର ଦରକାର ହଉଛି, କାରଣ ଯୋଉ constitution ଟା which was framed in 1949 cannot remain all time valid, because in the societal field, in the political field, in the economic field, so much of changes and aspirations of the people, they have undergone a sea change. How to meet their aspiration? जो समय जोटा आवश्यक ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଆମର ସମ୍ବିଧାନରେ ମଧ୍ୟ amendment ର provisions ରହିଛି. We have provisions of amendment. That was most important. It is a living document. It can be updated. It is futuristic. It is future oriented. प्रथम रिटन कन्स्टिट्यूशन आमर होल वर्ल्ड रो जदि आमे संविधान गुडा को आमे रैंसैक करबा, द फर्स्ट रिटन कन्स्टिट्यूशन वाज यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका. कारण ब्रिटिशर माने हमको शासन करथले, किंतु सेमानक देश रे लिखित संविधान नथिला. यू मस्ट बी नोइंग दैट दे हैव नो प्रोविजन ऑफ written constitution. It was unwritten constitution. प्रथम फिलाडेल्फिया कन्वेंशन यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका रे written constitution तैयारी हला. That was the first written constitution in America in 18th century, 1789 in 18th century. And that was a break with the monarchical colonial links with Britain. For your information, अमेरिका जोटा कि सबुठारु वर्तमान शक्तिशाली राष्ट्र बोले भाबु जे इट वाज आल्सो ए ब्रिटिश कॉलोनी. 13 colonies of America. ब्रिटिशर माने सेठी भी शासन करथि. Within 2 years, the Constitution of the United States went through 10 amendments incorporating the rights of the people in form of limits to governmental power. And those rights, they are conceived in terms of the liberal, laissez-faire doctrines that put premium on the right to life, liberty, and personal property. In the 20th century, this view of the rights was considerably widened by the welfare socialistic approach. कारण देखो स्टेट रो नेचर टा धीरे धीरे चेंज होउची. When America was born, it was even now it is more or less a laissez-faire state. Laissez-faire रो अर्थ कोन? Let alone. State रो intervention should be minimal. State information should be minimal. So we will find that the concept of welfare state has cropped up gradually. And when the concept of welfare state has cropped up, concept of laissez-faireism or let alone doctrine, it has lost gradual importance. कारण state रो intervention टाको हमें धीरे धीरे प्रोत्साहित कले. So America, which was the first laissez-faireistic or capitalistic state, it has also accepted the welfare measures. So the new, देखो state रो nature change हेबा सहित individual right रो मध्य interpretation change हला. So new rights were also included in the other constitutions of the world. And the scope of old rights were widened by judicial interpretations. Judiciary बा गोटे देशर न्यायालय मध्य concept of right टाको मध्य इंटरप्रेट कला, रीइंटरप्रेट कला with the widening of the either widening of or squeezing of state power in various fields. So the new constitution जोड़ा को धीरे धीरे आसिला after USA. Even India is a written constitution. Before that also there are constitutions of other countries. For example, the constitution of USSR जोटा बर्तमान अवश्य डिफंक्ट हो गला USSR तो आपण माने जानचंती disintegrate करि गला now Russia but then USSR it incorporates the right to gainful employment as a fundamental right of every citizen. In USA, affirmative action in favor of the weaker section was also legally validated. Constitution of Ireland incorporated certain directives to the government on people's welfare. So what about the outlook of our constitutional fathers? आमर संविधान टा तैयारी हेबा आगुरु ए गुडी को जन्म देई सारछन यूएसए एसएसआर आ ब्रिटेन जदियो भी अनरिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इट वाज द ओल्डेस्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ द वर्ल्ड आयरलैंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन कैनेडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ये सब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन रो वेरियस प्रिंसिपल्स को अकोमोडेट करी करी आमर संविधान तैयारी हला सो द प्रोक्लेमेशन ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आफ्टर द ट्रांसफर ऑफ पावर फ्रॉम द ब्रिटिश naturally it heralded a new era very interestingly and expectedly the Indian constitution inherited the world trend through the experiences of the people during the freedom struggle. So our constitution retained the liberal democratic framework but broadened the scope of government intervention with a view to promoting social reform and welfare. कारण आमे वेलफेयर स्टेट रो मेजर्स को बेसी एक्सेप्ट कले आ आपण जो समय वेलफेयर स्टेट को एक्सेप्ट करिवे स्टेट को बेसी पावर दवा को आपण बाध्य कारण वेलफेयर मेजर उडा नले केमती प्रमोट हो सो with the advent of welfare state more powers they have been granted to the state. Then also we have the chapters on fundamental rights. We have chapters on directive principle of state policy. We shall gradually get to know about all those things. There is also a prohibition on the society to practice untouchability. एवढा सब हमरो डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल रखा गला आपण सेति को जाय छी परे when we shall discuss I shall gradually elaborate on this point that how fundamental right is a chapter on political rights political justice but directive principle of state policy chapter 4 of our constitution is a chapter on economic and social justice. आमर जो आम प्रियाम्बल टाको पढ़िबा that was like a mirror of the constitutional ideology हमर पॉलिटिकल साइंस पाठरे प्रियाम्बल ऊपर बहुत जिंस बे पढ़ा होजी कारण बहुत दिन धरि तर्जमा चलिला जे प्रियाम्बल whether it is a inseparable part of the constitution or not. Some people say no, it is just a mukhabandha like a preface to a book. Preface cannot be a integral part of the book. अनेक भाविले जे प्रियाम्बल टा सेमती संविधान रो गोटे मुखबंध किंतु ग्रेजुअली even though this is a preface this has become a part and parcel of the constitution because it contains the important ideological basis on which our constitution has been framed. This also speaks about the democratic spirit of our country. Then also it speaks about the popular sovereignty. आपण देखंतु प्रियम्बल रे प्रथम वर्ड टा कोन कहै छी we the people of India. So people are the ultimate source of power, people's power. They are the ultimate source of people's power. तामने संविधान सेथि कहै छी लास्ट वाटर दे देखंतु we the people of India रो आरंभ होई छी प्रियम्बल इज a single sentence. It is a complex sentence. We the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign. प्रथमे तीनोटी वार्ड थिला sovereign democratic republic. Then in the 42nd amendment act secular and socialist ए जोडा वार्ड भर्ती हला सेटा हम ग्रेजुअली पढिबा. So this sentence ends with do hereby adopt, enact and give this constitution to ourselves on this 26th day of 1949. So this can be clearly interpreted that the people of India, they are the sovereign masters. They have framed the constitution for themselves. It is not by way of a gift from the Britishers. So we have adopted, we have enacted, and also we have given this constitution to ourselves. So the single line of the preamble, this complex sentence, talks about so much important things to us about the ideologies for which the Constitution stands, about the source of the Constitution, and all that. So, our Constitution promises to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political. It has also given us liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. And then also, it assures among us the fraternity and the dignity of the individual. ये केवल fraternity देनी, dignity of the individual को मध्य establish करिए. So, the preamble, even by judicial pronouncements, it has been established that it has become a part and parcel of the Constitution. तार कारण संविधानर लॉ संपर्कीय जेकोसी केसेस बा कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को विचार कला बेले judiciary repeatedly takes the help of the preamble to decide a case, a constitutional conflict. And what the preamble speaks about this? So naturally, preamble has become very, very important. The rise of the people is very important. The significance of the universal adult franchise, it cannot be overstressed. The Constitution not only made the people the ultimate masters of their destiny, but it has also made them equal. The traditional Indian social system, which was fragmented by religious and ethnic differences, which was socially stratified by caste, gradually lost its legitimacy. Now, individual human being became the fundamental units of polity. It is no more the individual as a member of a class group, individual as a member of a caste group, individual as a member of an ethnic group, is no more important, it is no more valid. Rather, individual himself has become the fundamental unit of polity. All the political economic rights which are described in our Constitution, they are granted to the individual, not the individual as a member of a class, not to the individual as the member of a caste group or like that. It is granted to an individual. So, think in terms of the rights. There are two kinds of rights. Our Indian Constitution में देखिबा, some granted to all persons and some to the citizens. किसी किसी जगह देखंतु all persons लिखा है, किसी किसी जगह citizens लिखा है. So the first kind of right is available to both citizens and non-citizens. So which include equality before the law, equal protection of law, Article 14. Then the protection against unlawful conviction, Article 20. Life and personal liberty, Article 21. Protection against unlawful detention, Article 22. Right against exploitation, Article 23. Freedom of religion, Article 25. Freedom of religious denomination and in the religious affairs, Article 26, etc. And these are some of the rights which are granted, which are available to citizens and non-citizens also. Non-citizen man, foreigner, alien who are moving, he is given the protection to his liberty, to his life. Then the Constitution also speaks about the nature of the rights. These rights are negative in form. ଆପଣ ଦେଖିବେ ଆମର fundamental rights chapter ଟା କେତେ number chapter? Chapter 3 of the Constitution. So when we shall dissect the nature of these rights, first one is these rights are negative in nature because they restrict the authorities from violating these rights, not to do. While most of these rights are against the state, some of them, like the right against untouchability, right to protection of minorities, and right, while the most of the other rights, like they are granted to the individuals, some rights are also granted to the groups. Article 27, Article 29, Article 30. These are the rights which are granted to the groups. Most of the rights are conditional upon the consideration of the public interest, law and order, and decency. Let me elaborate slightly on this. The rights, that is why we say rights granted are not absolute. The rights which are granted under Fundamental Rights Charter of Indian Constitution, they are not absolute. We enjoy them under restrictions. Good example, the details because time is short. Suppose we have a right to assemble, but we must assemble peaceably. We cannot cause any violence. So, virtually fundamental rights are enjoyed with restrictions. The word used is reasonable restriction. Of course, some of the scholars, they have pointed out that the reasonability, who shall decide the reasonability of the restriction? Obviously, the judiciary. To what extent? ଯଦି restriction ଟା ଏମିତି ହବ ଯେ ତୁମର right ର meaning କିଛି ରହିବନି. Suppose there is a right which is granted to me, but restrictions are so imposed that I cannot move an inch. So what is the use of that right? So the restrictions imposed by the state should be reasonable. ସେଥିପାଇଁ କୁହାଯାଇଛି ଧରନ୍ତୁ law and order को ମୁଁ ମୋର पर्सनल राइट को क्लेम କରିବା अर्थ ନୁହେଁ ଯେ ମୁଁ ମୋର ପବ୍ଲିକ ଡିସେନ୍ସି ବା law and order को ଭାଓଲେଟ କରିବି. So I enjoy my rights within a particular ambit. So these are very significant points about the fundamental rights granted under the Constitution. And again, the rights which are enjoyed in the traditional liberal democracies like United States, they are negatively framed so that the state does not take them away. The question of protection of those rights from the assault of other members of the society is lagged by the law and order functions of the state. Good example दिया କାରଣ ଏଟା ଗୋଟେ ଟ୍ରାଡିସନାଲ କନଜରଭେଟିଭ ସୋସାଇଟି ଆମେରିକାନ ଯୋଉ ଲେସେଫେରିଷ୍ଟିକ ସୋସାଇଟିର ଗୋଟେ ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଦିଆହେଇଛି. For instance, race riots in USA, they're dealt exclusively under the criminal law, which the state is constitutionally obliged to apply without discrimination. But what about India? In India, on the other hand, practice of untouchability by members of the upper caste is directly an offense against the constitution. तामने अस्पृश्यता जेकोसी फॉर्म में मध्य घृण्य. Untouchability in any form is a crime. It is against the constitution itself. So the minority communities मान को मध्य protection दिया जायछि. So it is the direct constitutional responsibility of the state to protect the social rights of the Dalits, the people of the scheduled caste community, the Adivasis, the tribals, and the religious and linguistic minorities. तमें देखंतु फंडामेंटल सेति मैं प्रथमे कहितली किछि राइट्स जाक इंडिविजुअल मेंबर मान को दिया जायछि, किछि राइट्स मान ग्रुप मान को दिया जायछि, because the rights to protect the interest of SCs, STs, OBCs, or the what is called other minority groups, सेटा काहे दिया जायछि, because there is every possibility that they may be exploited by the majority groups. So this is the difference of experience of fundamental rights in a liberal traditional society like USA and India. And the other significant difference is the older liberal constitutions is the specification of limits of the rights by the Constitution of India. But in the United States, the limits are set by the courts of law and depend upon the personal views of the judges. So that personal views are not ruled out in India, but they are restricted by Constitution itself. आम केस रे फंडामेंटल राइट्स मध्य किछि किछि सिचुएशन रे they can be suspended. For example, the rights to freedoms under Article 19. The citizens cannot claim them, they cannot enjoy them when the national emergency in operation. काहे करायछि कारण जने व्यक्तिर स्वाधीनता आ जो समय देश गोटे ग्रेव सिचुएशन भितर जाउछि, नेशनल गोटे कैलामिटी भितर जाउछि, गोटे नेशनल इमरजेंसी भितर जाउछि, these freedoms under Article 19 should be suspended. That is the provision. And तार अर्थ नय जे इंडिविजुअल को तार लिबर्टी बा फ्रीडम रु वंचित करायछि. That is only in a particular context, that when the nation faces a grave national hazard, those rights must be suspended. आउ गोटे आपण मार्क करिवे अमेरिका आउ इंडिया भितरे सेटा अवश्य slightly technical. The interpretation of the fundamental rights, the phrase used is due process of law, which is accepted in case of America. But the phrase procedure established by law, which is in vogue in India, of course that relates to another very debatable sphere, that is preponderance or dominance of legislature or the dominance of the judiciary. And the judiciary versus legislature, that is a different context altogether. So whatever it may be, कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली रे जो प्रकार संविधान को तैयारी करा गला अधिकार स्ट्रक्चर विषय तर्जमा करा गला the structure of the rights in our constitution it envisaged an active role of the state in bringing forth social transformation सबले कारण हमर दीर्घ 200 वर्ष धरी वेस्टर्न डोमिनेंस ब्रिटिश डोमिनेंस द्वारा द्वारा शासित होता गोटे कंट्री दी वेरी पॉलिटी एंड इकोनॉमी इट हैज अंडरगॉन ए ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन तेणु कीपिंग इन व्यू दिस सोशल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन दी political independence of the Indians, the constitution was framed. This is all about briefly. These are all brief discussions. Then I think with some closing remarks, I shall end up because another 6-7 minutes left. Another important part is directive principle of state policy. Chapter 4. देखो तो दीटा का चैप्टर पाखापाखि रखा है चैप्टर 3 द फंडामेंटल राइट्स चैप्टर 4 द डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी डायरेक्टिव मु प्रथम आपन कहि प्रिएम्बल लिखा है जस्टिस सोशल इकोनॉमिक एंड पॉलिटिकल दैट मस्ट बी ग्रांटेड टू द इंडियंस ऑफ फ्री इंडिया पॉलिटिकल जस्टिस हैज बीन एनविसेज्ड इन द चैप्टर ऑफ फंडामेंटल राइट्स जोटा कि मु आपन बतन कहली but the social and economic rights they are guaranteed to the Indians under chapter 4 that is the chapter on the directive principles of state policy chapter 3 और chapter 4 भीतर गोटे मेजर डिफरेंस मु आपन कहे fundamental rights are justiciable when a citizen feels that his rights have been taken away by the state he can appeal to the court of law and under article 32 that is right to constitutional remedies he can seek protection from the court so fundamental rights are justiciable गोटे इंडिविजुअल का राइट्स जदि क्षुण्ण होची से जुडिशियरी के अप्रोच करि परिबो आज्ञा मोर राइट स्टेट नै जाईची एनकोरेज करूची आपन मते प्रोटेक्शन देउ सेठी जो रिट जुरिसडिक्शन दैट इज हैबियस कर्पस मैंडामस प्रोहिबिशन सर्टिवरारी एंड को वारंटो पांच प्रकार रिट को प्रयोग करी जुडिशियरी कैन प्रोटेक्ट बट डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी दे आर नॉन जस्टिसाएबल डायरेक्टिव्स रो अर्थ कोन से डायरेक्टिव रे स्टेट को डायरेक्शन दिया है टू डू सर्टेन थिंग्स स्टेट रो उन्नयन पई इंडिविजुअल मानकर बेनिफिट पई वेलफेयर स्टेट रो एस्टैब्लिशमेंट पई the state must do these things so I think I have just told you fundamental rights are negative in character they are negative or in by nature they are restrictions on the state the state cannot do this cannot take that he cannot violate like this but directive principles are positive in nature it directs the state to do certain things do this do that like that it is positive but it is not justifiable जदि कौन सी कारण स्टेट गोटे निर्दिष्ट रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की करि पारु नाही इन दैट केस द इंडिविजुअल कैनॉट सू द स्टेट इन द कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ जे काहे कलानी बोली से कोर्ट को जाई परिबो नाही बिकॉज डायरेक्टिव्स आर डायरेक्टिव्स दे आर नॉट जस्टिफाइबल सेति कहे कि द स्टेट मस्ट स्ट्राइव टू डू दिस थिंग्स स्टेट चेष्टा करिवो For example, establishment of cottage industry. What example I am just citing? It shall try to improve cottage industry. If for some reason or other it has failed somewhere, you cannot try in the court of law. So, socio-economic transformation by directive principles are very, very important. So, they assure socio and economic justice to the people. The most fundamental directive to the state is to strive to secure a social order in which justice, social, economic and political shall inform all the institutions of their national life. सबुठो important जिनस मु एति प्रथम क्लियर करिछि स्टेट सब एमती मेजर नब एमती स्टेप्स ग्रहण कर जोटा कि सोसाइटी एमती गोटे सोशल ऑर्डर क्रिएट हम जो थे कि सोशल इकोनॉमिक एंड पॉलिटिकल जस्टिस कैन बी एस्टैब्लिश्ड and they can be informed in all the institutions of the social life. The state shall in particular strive to minimize inequalities in income and eliminate inequalities of status, facilities and opportunities, not only among the individuals, but also among the groups of the people residing in different areas and engaged in different vocations. That is Article 38. In particular, the state shall direct its policies towards securing adequate means of livelihood for all citizens, men and women equally, distribution of ownership and control to best serve the common good, preventing concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment, ensuring equal pay for equal work for both men and women, protection of health and strength of the workers, men and women, prevention of abuse of the children, and facilitation of the children to grow in a healthy manner and with freedom and dignity. That is Article 39. देखो केते इंपोर्टेंट स्टेट सब चेष्टा करिवो इनइक्वालिटी को मिनिमाइज करिवो गोटे हेल्दी एटमॉस्फेयर क्रिएट करिवो जो कि सिटीजन्स माने ग्रो करिवे इक्वल पे फॉर इक्वल वर्क. So these are certain things which the state must strive. So directive is meant for common good and the life with dignity. एमती गोटे एटमॉस्फेयर स्टेट क्रिएट करिवो जो थे its citizens can lead a good life and a life with dignity. And in the economic sphere, there is a more guarded promise in the economic sphere. The state shall strive within the limits of the economic capacity and development. It can make effective provisions for securing the right to work, right to education, right to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness and disablement. So virtually, these provisions are meant to establish a welfare state. गोटे जनमंगल राष्ट्र जोड़ा का आवश्यकता है डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी प्रोविजन से होची. The state shall regard the raising of the level of nutrition, standard of living of the people, and the improvement of the public health, etc. Then right of the workers. The state shall make provisions for securing just and human conditions of work and the maternity relief. It shall endeavor to secure by suitable legislation or economic organization. And also there is provision for the weaker sections and the children, that the state is directed to provide within a period of 10 years from the proclamation of the Constitution to all children up to the age of 18 years. The state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of the society. And also there are provisions for the improvements in the sphere of agriculture and environment. States shall endeavor to develop agriculture and industry along the modern scientific lines. And Article 48A says, also it was incorporated by the 42nd Amendment Act in 1977. It enjoins the duty to protect and improve environment. Worldwide आंदोलन में परिणत होइछ environmental conservation. Our directive principle of state policy मध्य से कहूची that state must strive to protect and improve the environment and safeguard the forests and wildlife of the country. Second, the directive principle of state policy, I shall wind up now. It is already 7 o'clock. That even though they are not justiciable, जदियो directive principle को apply करिबारे गोटे state गोटे कोन जगह फेल करे, it cannot be tried by the citizens in the court of law. It cannot be sued. Still then, directive principles are more fundamental than fundamental rights because it really brings in the foundation stone of the welfare state of a country. It gives economic and social justice. Fundamental rights speaks of political justice, but sometimes social and economic politics, economic justice, they're more important for the citizens of the country than political justice. So I think with this I shall end up today. Virtually I have covered up the first 3 units of your book. That is mostly legacy of our national movement, then various debates on models of development, then the constitution and the social transformation. Okay, I think today I shall end up with this because it's quite a lengthy session from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So have you understood what I have discussed with you?
Sir, namaskar.
Hello, friends.
Sir, namaskar.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes,
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
you are
Yes, sir.
audible.
Okay. Thank you. Now I am closing the session. I am now quitting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for
Thank you,
the
sir.
session listening. Thank you. Thank you very much.
sir. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Vignoraj.